Hello, and welcome to the Good Growth Podcast. On this episode, my guests and I will be discussing how Heinz, one of the biggest fast-moving consumer goods brands, have been rapidly innovating their products and proposition to help them better understand and better serve their customers. So with that in mind, I'm excited to introduce my guests today, the President of Northern Europe Kraft Heinz, Georgiana, better known as JoJo de Noronha. Welcome, JoJo.
Thank you very much, Dan. That was a very well-spelled last name.
Oh, good. I'm glad I got that right. The pronunciation's never easy. I understand as well, JoJo, I've seen that you've studied in the US and you speak a few different languages, is that right?
Yeah, I went to university in the US. So I'm born in Brazil, raised in Brazil until the age of 17. And then I went to university in the US. But I went to a German school my whole life, which is something not a lot of people know. But I was educated in a German school, German education, German environment. So I do speak a bit of German. Obviously Portuguese, English, because I went to university in the US. And shortly after university, I moved to the UK. So English has been my work language, I would say.
Yeah, that's a good blend. So in terms of your work with Kraft Heinz, you've actually been working for the business for over 6 years now. You've been in your role as President of Northern Europe for about 18 months or so. Can you tell us a bit about the roles that you had leading up to your most recent role? Because they've been quite people-focused.
Yeah, no, they have. Actually, I've done a few different things. So maybe worth saying, I started my career in finance. So when I got out of university, I went to work in M&A advisory at Lehman Brothers. A lot of people remember, maybe some younger don't remember Lehman Brothers, but Lehman Brothers is a bank that once existed, the very prominent investment bank. I then moved on to do private equity, and I spent in total about 9 years in finance. So I moved to then Kraft Heinz in 2015. And I did sales first. So I first worked in the sales organization, and I actually covered the Tesco account, which is our largest customer in the UK. And then about a year and a little bit into my role in sales, I was asked if I wanted to take a role as the head of talent for the European zone. And of course, it came as a huge surprise to me, as you would expect. And, I came from finance, then I was in sales. I came to FMCG, total change in careers, but I don't think I expected to totally change functions, that much. But I thought, what, they took a leap of faith in me when they hired me. I didn't have a background in FMCG, and I thought it was just fair to take a leap of faith on the people who took a leap of faith in me. So I decided to take the challenge. They obviously gave me several reasons, my ability to recognize talent, coach people, etc. So I thought, those were good attributes, and I thought I could maybe add value to that function, having come from kind of the business side. Spent about 4 years in that. And then, after 4 years, several different roles within people, I decided to, the company, and I decided that it was a good move to start a general management career.
And you were discussing just before recording that the timing of that move into your current role, the last 18 months, I imagine the objectives and perhaps goals and ambitions you had then may have changed a bit now, given the circumstances of the world over that period of time.
Actually, that is, when you do those interviews, you get a lot of the same questions. I have to say, I haven't gotten this one, but on reflection, I don't think I had a different plan to the plan we've put in place over the last 18 months. The plan was always we've been known very much internally and probably with our customers as well for being a company that has done very well on just general revenue management work, price pack architecture. We built a very, very strong team behind that, but not as good at innovating, especially within the Heinz brand in the last, let's say 5 to 6 years. So the business really turned around profitability and top line, 6 years ago. But I think we failed to innovate to a level that, would make the P&L sustainable long term. So that was always my aim. It was to balance our levers of growth between what we did in revenue management and innovation. So in the beginning, we set a strategic plan, 5-year strategic plan, where we really set ourselves a challenge to innovate on the core, but also to start innovating on adjacencies to our core. So not just on the categories we play in, but adjacent categories. And of course, the pandemic came, but to your question, we didn't necessarily change course. We just had to deal with the crisis whilst we were implementing our strategy. But I really saw an opportunity, because when a business is doing well, and we did very well during the pandemic, because consumers obviously went back, and I'm sure we've all talked about that before, they went back to trusted brands like our brand. We saw an even bigger opportunity to innovate. And I think what the pandemic did, it accelerated our plans much faster than I think what we expected at the start of our strategic plan, which was set, as I said, in the beginning of 2020. So I don't think there were any changes to the direction. I think there was an acceleration to the direction. And of course, when you're dealing with a crisis, the focus needs to be balanced between dealing with the crisis, serving our customers today, but also innovating and implementing the strategy for the future.
It's interesting that you talk about that the pandemic's actually accelerated perhaps your period of innovation, because you also say there that and rightly so, that the pandemic is consumers have sort of gone back to their trusted brands. So was there almost an argument to say, let's stick to what we're good at here because customers are going to buy us?
No, I think if we had done that, if I interpret the question right, sticking to what we were doing was just simply selling what we've been selling for hundreds of years, which is, soup in a can, beans in a can, our regular sauces range. I think what we decided was to stay true to what consumers were asking us to do. If I look at all of our brand equity drivers, the one brand equity driver that we've been lagging behind versus relative to the others is relevancy, bringing relevancy to consumers. So there's an equity driver on their Heinz, which is, in touch with what I want. And the way, of course, a non-marketer interprets that, and I don't have a marketing background, is, in touch with what I want is relevancy to consumers. Are the products we're selling today relevant to what consumers want to consume? And I think what the pandemic did, it proved that our current core portfolio is still relevant, but that we needed to continue to make that core portfolio relevant so that we were relevant tomorrow and not just remain relevant during a crisis. So I think it didn't necessarily change what we were doing. I think we added on to what we were doing. And when I talk about relevancy to our core, is different to innovating on adjacencies or launching new NPD. It's really making what we currently make. So let's take, beans, for example. A few years ago, we launched a NAS bean, so a no added salt and sugar beans. This is relevancy to our core. So this is making our core business more relevant to consumers. So taking out salt and sugar, which is obviously a trend that has been happening for many, many years now. What is the next NAS beans? This is relevancy to the core in our view. And of course, in addition to that, as I said, there's also, launching the Heinz brand into adjacencies, which I think the crisis proved that the brand is still so loved that consumers allow us to go above and beyond where we currently play.
Yeah, that's really important. That and like you say, that's being in touch and in tune with what your customers want, but also what they're open to seeing the Heinz brand do as well. You've talked about sort of liberating the Heinz Beanz brand and moving into new markets and bringing Heinz out the can, which is supported by a lot of what you've said there. Can you just sort of, I suppose, clarify a bit more about what you mean by that, but also were there any sort of, in your mind, any risks associated with going through this sort of period of innovation because of Heinz's history as being such a well-known and loved brand?
Yeah, no, it's funny because this beans liberation stuff, it started like all stories start. We were in a meeting room discussing our future plans, our strategic plans for the next 5 years. And somebody made a comment, but why don't we just liberate this bean from the can? It's been stuck in there for hundreds of years. And all of a sudden, the media started talking about, so it's a funny term, but one that I love. And it really drives what we're doing with beans. So to answer your question, what does that actually mean? That really means what the sentence says, taking the bean out of the can and putting the bean into new consumer propositions. So really leveraging the powerful superfood that bean is. And once I was even quoted by, I think, a nutritionist on an article around, whether beans is a superfood or not. No food is a superfood because you need to always have a balanced diet. But beans has a lot of great nutritional elements. It's low in energy release. It's very high in fiber. It's very high in protein. So it's an incredible food that we should, put at the center of our plate, especially if you want to be, balancing your diet between, animal source protein and plant protein. So with that in mind, we've already been playing a great, quotations, superfood for many years. Why not bring that superfood into other consumer propositions so more consumers in more occasions can enjoy the superpowers of the bean? So that was the idea behind liberating the bean. And I think your question around the risks, there's always risk when you take a food that is a proposition that is so loved, and it's really a comfort food for consumers in this country. When you think of Heinz, you think of beans. When you think of beans, you think of comfort, and you think of your childhood, and you think of tea time. I think bringing the bean into new propositions and new occasions means, taking it out of that kind of comfort food association and into new associations. And I think there is a risk in that, which is, consumers, start getting confused as to what the bean really means, what Heinz really means. But I believe it's such an opportunity, first and foremost, because if you don't try, you don't know what the opportunities are. And what we're doing here is we're trying. Not everything is going to work out. Not everything is going to be successful, but we need to try. We need to try to liberate the bean from the can and take it to new consumers.
And something else that you've tried and it has been hugely successful is the move into D2C or direct-to-consumer channels. Last year, you teamed up with Good Growth and we helped launch Heinz to Home in the UK, which was Heinz's first sort of venture into D2C. And you got it live within just 3 weeks in the midst of a pandemic and just all the sort of logistical aspects of people working remotely at the time. Firstly, I suppose, how were you able to do that in such a large organisation like Kraft Heinz? That's quite a move to do and one to stick to.
Yeah, no, first of all, then thank you to Good Growth for the partnership there. I think it was hugely important in making it a successful launch. How are we able to do it? I mean, first is mindset. I think we do have our CEO, I may touch upon a quick story. Our current CEO, Miguel, when he started at Kraft Heinz, the first thing he did was to give everybody a book called The Growth Mindset by Carol Dweck, which obviously in very, simple essence is, look at the world with a set of possibilities. Don't look at barriers. Don't look that things are not possible because you don't know them. Everybody can learn new skills. Everything is possible if you try. So I think that initiative from Miguel really started changing the mindsets of Kraft Heinz. And it opened, I think, many, many different avenues of possibilities for us. So first and foremost, I felt I had permission. And I think that's really important in a company of our size, because I haven't worked at big corporates before, but I hear stories of, layers and layers of approval. We don't have this at Kraft Heinz. I think as long as, you're taking the right level of risk, we allow people to take those risks. So I felt I had the permission. In turn, my team felt they had the permission. And in 3 weeks' time, from ideation until inception, that was the time it took for us to launch into our D2C. It didn't cost us a lot of money, and it wasn't perfect, because if we had perfected it, it would have taken us more time and more money. And we decided to go with the imperfect and hear from real consumers and start perfecting it over time. If you look at our D2C today, it feels much nicer than when we first launched. Our service levels are much better. Our offerings are much better. We're continuing to improve with time. And I think this is, the beauty of having this growth mindset within a business, is that we're not trying to be perfect. We're just trying new things and accepting that they may be imperfect at the start, and then we perfect it over time.
Yeah, and I guess what you get from that approach, that sort of quick decision making, get something live and perfect it over time, it is a Heinz to Home journey that is actually shaped by your customers, because you're learning from your customers what they like, what they don't like, how do they respond to different things on the site, and building the site around them and their behaviour rather than what people in Kraft Heinz necessarily think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I always like to say, consumers nowadays, they want brands with personalities. Everybody talks about it. But what I say to my team is that no personality is perfect. So let's not try to be perfect, because Heinz isn't perfect. I mean, we've failed, we've succeeded, we're going to continue to try new things. And some of them, as I said, will succeed and some won't. And I think this idea of coming out still imperfect at times showcases our personality. And you talked about, what are the risks you see? I mean, then I think unless we're doing the wrong thing, integrity wise, nothing is a bad try. And I think the more we try, the more we're going to showcase that we are a brand with real people behind it, and we do have a very genuine personality. So
yeah, absolutely. Heinz has launched in other markets. Heinz to Home's launched in other markets beyond the UK. What ambitions do you have then to expand that D2C proposition, both I guess geographically and perhaps from a product perspective as well?
Yeah, no, great question. So I don't cover the other geographies where Heinz Home is now present, but I obviously know well, because they contacted us to copy with pride. So we now have Heinz to Home in New Zealand. We've got Heinz to Home in Australia. We've got Heinz to Home in Ireland as well, which is a market I cover. So incredibly proud for all the markets that are trying, the D2C model. For us, so there are many other plans geographically to expand D2C across Kraft Heinz. I think there are even talks around maybe the US doing it, other brands doing it as well within Heinz. Of course, we have Heinz to Home, but there are many other brands within the Kraft Heinz portfolio that we're thinking of a D2C format or model. In terms of our expansion ambition, we've got a couple of things, and it all falls into the three pillars of what Heinz to Home is going to serve, or how Heinz to Home will serve our business. First is really building a stronger data backbone and linking our D2C consumer knowledge to all of our digital activations, within and out of the D2C site. So we've already started that journey, and it's helping us a lot on how we communicate with consumers within the digital network, social media, of course. The second is, the test and learn model. So really making sure that we're leveraging the site to test and learn new innovation. And of course, the audience won't be able to see it because they're only listening to us, but just behind me, you've got our Echo Sleeve multi-pack, which we're incredibly proud. We're launching it as of next month. And this is a very good example of how we tested and learned from consumers what they wanted out of our Echo Sleeve, what they liked, what they didn't like, so that we could improve, perfect it, so that we could launch it, closer to what consumers wanted. And we want to continue to do that. In fact, we want to do more of it. And then the last, which I think is potentially a real driver of traffic for us in the future. And I would invite any other brands who are listening to us to come to us and pitch their propositions. One is personalization. So continue to personalize the bundles that we sell, so that consumers go to the site and they feel that we're offering what they really want, and a differentiation between the site and what they can see in physical stores and in other online e-commerces. And personalization also means, being able to personalize your bottles, personalize your cans, which is something we've been offering from the start, but we want to expand into other parts of the portfolio. And the last is why I invited the brands is really partnership with other brands and making sure that we offer bundles that can fit into, perfect consumer occasions. So let's say you want to, do a barbecue. Why not partner with other brands that can, provide consumers with, other elements of what their barbecue would be composed of. So we offer the sauces, what are the other brands that are out there can offer and partner with us on the Heinz to Home. So I think these are the three things we're doing to expand our site. We're very excited about the growth opportunities. It can be, times and times bigger than what it is today.
Yeah, huge opportunities there. Talking about Kraft Heinz then as a corporation, Kraft Heinz are involved in a number of different projects across sort of different issues. We're in Pride Month at the moment. Kraft Heinz as a project around Pride. Kraft Heinz is also around its sort of environmental footprint, sustainability. Can you just tell us a bit more about some of the projects Kraft Heinz does and describe a bit more about what actually they entail? There's action behind these projects, so well as just sort of, saying, oh, this is what we do. There's a lot of action behind them.
Yeah, no, very much. Actually, maybe I'll touch upon one that I'm incredibly excited just because we literally, before I came to talk to you, we announced it to all of our employees, which is our parental policy. So I'm incredibly passionate about, diversity. I told the team a little story around, my journey throughout D&I and B, diversity, inclusion, and belonging. I started obviously my career in finance, and when I started my career in finance, I thought, I was quite special to be a woman in a world where, women were incredibly underrepresented, even relative to other industries. So of course, women are still underrepresented in any corporate environment, but especially in the finance world, it is, starker than in other industries. And I remember joining, quite at a young age, feeling like I was very special. I was the only woman in the room, the vast majority of the times. And it's good to feel special. I think nobody doesn't like to feel special. But fast forward to now, and I actually no longer feel special, because feeling special doesn't necessarily make a change. I'm not going to make a change if I feel special. I actually just feel lonely whenever I'm in a room and I'm the only woman in the room. So, thinking about that, we've set ourselves targets to get to parity by 2025. Which I think setting targets is something I'm incredibly passionate about, because it drives action. There's a lot of talk, and there has been a lot of talk around gender equality for many, many years. But if you look at the stats, the stats haven't moved. And I think the reason they haven't moved is because we haven't set targets. We set targets to deliver financial results. Why not set targets to, equalize, gender? So the one thing we announced today, which makes me proud, and some people don't associate the impact it can have on gender equality, but it's secondary care policy. So we talk a lot about primary carers. So in general, mothers, but primary carers is the gender neutral way of saying it. And we offer 6 months paid leave at Kraft Heinz, but secondary care was really a gap. We only offered, first we offered 0, then we offered 3 weeks back in 2018. And today we actually announced that we're going to be offering 12 weeks, so 3 months paid leave to secondary carers. And the reason that plays a role is, if you've got primary and secondary carers taking leave, you allow for both, men and women to have more of an equal career and equal career progression. We know that maternity leave can, a lot of times, they can regress a female's career. And I think by allowing both female and male to have almost an equal, amount of time, which is our dream in the future, but now is 3 months, which is a huge progress. I think we're going to progress in that direction of equalizing, gender career progression.
This ties into really your responsibility as a leader. It's fair to say, I think, because of the times we've been living in, people have looked to leaders more than ever, and perhaps the responsibility of a leader has never been, and the actions of a leader has never been more important. Can you give us a bit more of a flavour of how you like to lead and the sort of responsibilities you feel you have to make sure that voices are heard?
Yeah, I mean, I remember well a piece of advice that I got when I started this role, because if you look at my career, especially at Kraft Heinz, I've been put in new challenges very, very often. And the consequence of that is that you always feel quite unprepared. I was never put in a role that I quite knew what I was doing, and I had a background in doing it. So that was a very common feeling every time I got the announcement, JoJo, you're going to be promoted to X, Y, Z. And there was even an instance, being very, very open to the audience, that I cried and I said to my boss, I don't want to be promoted. And he said, but why? I said, because I feel unprepared and I haven't closed the cycle in my previous role. So I think the one advice I got when I started this new role was make your journey public. And I think that was a great advice, because what I do now is I share my vulnerabilities a lot more. I share when I don't know, and I very often don't know. I mean, I know a lot less than my team, the vast majority of all the time, I would say, not the vast majority of the time. And I think making yourself vulnerable and letting your team know that you don't know allows them to take risks, which is actually the topic we started this conversation with. So I like to lead that way. I am imperfect, like every other human. I don't know what I'm doing at all times. I think I've got good instincts and good common sense. And I love seeing people progress and coaching people. But other than that, when it comes to the capabilities within the industry, I am learning, and I'm still learning 18 months on, and I'll still be learning 5 years on. So I think that would be the first point, is really, making your journey public at all times, even when you're experienced, I think allows your people to take risks, which I think is very powerful for any organization. And the other is the growth mindset, which I look at it as every day is a learning opportunity. I have times within my calendar, everybody in the organization knows this, where I call them thinking time or learning time. So I try to every single week have a chunk of time, and it's actually coming up after our chat today, my chunk of time this week, where I just do more deeper work. And sometimes it's not even work related to the work I'm doing at work. It's just reading and, having reflection moments, because we should never stop learning. And, it's sad by a lot of people, but the problem is life goes on. You've got, busy schedules, and then you don't make time for learning. And if you don't make time for learning, like you make time for working, you're not going to learn. So I really believe in, getting our schedules and our outlooks, to help us make time for learning. And that's how I also like to lead, is to exemplify the learning journey.
Yeah, there's some really good points. That openness, firstly, is refreshing, and I think employees appreciate and see that. And again, it just sort of it humanizes leaders as well, because sometimes, again, it's quite easy to hide, I think. And the second point there around the sort of learning opportunity, it's, I guess, again, once you're so in the day to day, if you don't have that time to sort of pull yourself out of the day to day and reflect and take on new things, then you inevitably start to regress, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. New things are happening every day. So if you don't take time for learning, you're not gonna continue to progress. But I think equally reflection time is important as well. It's no surprise that a lot of people say my best ideas come when I'm taking a shower. I mean, no kidding, because you're not staring at a screen and trying to respond to your emails frantically. So I think why don't we make those shower times more normal? Like why don't we just normalize thinking time and reflection time? There's this tendency to think that if you're not in a meeting or you're not responding to an email, that you're not working. But if you don't allow yourself time to stop and reflect and not respond to an email and not talk and not pay attention to whatever is being presented to you, I think it's very difficult to come up with new ideas.
JoJo, it's been brilliant talking to you, getting to know more about Heinz and the sort of projects you've got coming up, but also a bit about you as well, and in your leadership role. Thank you so much for your time, and real pleasure talking to you.
Thank you very much, Dan. Pleasure talking to you too.
Thank you.